After Bill's discussion, I am going to take back over and go over a few other items. But at this point, Bill, I'm going to go over a few tips and tricks here. We're going to ask everybody to mute their mic when they're not speaking. And if you have any questions, please put those in the chat box and we will get to those questions at the end of Bill's remarks. And I am going to stop sharing my screen here and turn it over to you, Bill.
Thanks for being here, everybody. Appreciate it. I was hoping today that we could have kind of a question and answer session. I'll give you a little background on some of the insights that we have, but I'd really like to hear from you guys with questions or suggestions or ideas as we get into it. Most of you have probably heard a lot of the WordSprint story before, how, years ago, we started in the 1980s as a copywriting company, basically just writing stuff for people. And that led into printing, it led into mailing, it led into websites, it led into social media, it led into emails. And, today we do all kinds of marketing projects for clients. But our specialty is donor relations. We work with hundreds of nonprofits and university development, and we're good at asking people for money. So, and what's interesting is that we've kept statistics, we've kept data on all of the campaigns that, well, not all of them, many of the campaigns where our clients have been willing to share the results. And over the years, this started developing really in the early 2000s, mid 2000s, we started seeing a pattern of what works and what doesn't work. And by 2010, 2012, we started realizing that, hey, we know what works. And it wasn't very flattering to us because it kind of revealed that a lot of the things that we were doing were not that important. But if you haven't heard it before, I can tell you right now what works when it comes to donor relations. And this is not an advertisement for us. This is, you'll see, this is stuff that you do, not that we do. There are really only three main things that matter when it comes to donor relations. And this would involve any kind of end of year campaign or any kind of event, any kind of digital marketing you would do. The three things that matter. The first one is having the right message. And what we mean by the right message is that our data has shown that those organizations that stay on message, that have a very succinct, well-stated mission, that can say in a sentence or two exactly what they're about and why they do what they do, that they have that great elevator speech. Those are the organizations that do well. Having the right message is very important. And this leads to branding, it leads to your look, your logo, your taglines and all this kind of thing. But we found that those organizations that stay on message, that keep that message consistent, do better than those that keep trying to express it a different way. I'm not saying you can't rebrand, you can, but I would do so with a lot of thought and care. So consistent messaging, the right message is extremely important. The second thing that's very important, obviously, is getting that message to the right people. You can have the greatest message and services in the world, but if you can't get them to people, what's the point? Are you guys hearing that feedback? Is that me?
It's not you, but I think they're muted now.
Okay. The right people, of course, means your constituents, your donors, your volunteers, your staff. Life really is all about relationships. and that is the truth that we discovered through years of collecting this data, is that the organizations that understand this, that understand it is about relationships, are the ones that do well. And how that ties in with donor relations is that the organizations that understand that magic moment of relationship, you know, the person you bump into in the grocery store that you haven't seen for 3 years, and they ask, hey, what are you doing now? And you say, well, hey, I'm working for St. Francis Service Dogs. And, oh, really? What do they do? And you have this conversation. That person is a way better prospect to become a supporter of your organization than some name that you purchase from some online list vendor. It's about relationships, and the organizations that do well have this relationship culture where everyone in that organization, the staff, the directors, the volunteers, everyone is empowered to speak for the organization and to capture that information. After that grocery store discussion, they bring that information back to the database. So the next time there's a touch, there's an invitation to an event, the next time there's a mailing or a email or anything, that new prospect is in that mix. So again, the right message to the right people. And we found that the organizations that did well developed this relationship culture where they really understand the power of humans talking to humans. So the right message to the right people. And this, we'll get into a lot of questions about how do you reach those people? Do you do it through email? Do you do it through mail? Do you do it through events? Do you do it through social media? Those are some great discussions we can have. The answer is yes, all of those. What surprised us the most as we gathered our data is that having the right message and getting it to the right people was not the complete formula for success. We worked with lots of organizations back then who had a great message, had a great target audience, but they still struggled. And after a few years of sifting through the data and looking at the patterns, what we realized was there's a third component to successful donor relations. Yes, it's the right message, it's getting it to the right people, but it's doing it with the right rhythm. There is a magic about rhythm that it surprises us to this day. Every time we add more data to our database on this, it's like, wow. There's something about rhythm that builds trust. And what do I mean by rhythm? I mean that the touches that you have with your constituents, the event that you have, the social media that you post, the emails that you send, the mailers that you send out, that these are executed in a consistent cadence, a repetitive pattern that builds trust. Let me give you some examples. Let's say you have this doesn't work very well in the COVID era, but let's say you have an open house. Doing that at a consistent time of the year every year is invaluable. You would find that the first one or two might struggle, but by the time you hit that third year, it's usually a 3-year cycle, you've established enough trust that rhythm kind of sinks in with your constituents, and you'll get much better response. If you do a end of year appeal mailing, very important that you do it on the same rhythm, the same cadence every year. Jumping around and saying, that didn't work, let's try mailing it in June next year, or that didn't work, let's do it in February. That is the recipe to struggle. So it's the right message to the right people with the right rhythm. And the question might be, what is that rhythm? Well, it's different for each organization. We work with some folks that ask donors for money every month. We work with some that do it once a year. We work with some that do it 4 times a year. It's different for each organization. And you probably know what that rhythm is for your organization. You know what feels right to your supporters. So the big 3, the right message to the right people with the right rhythm. So that is what we preach. That's what we encourage our clients, our friends, our allies to do, is to work on that message, work on getting it to the right people, and do it with the right rhythm. Now, there are lots of other little things we could talk about, but why don't we pause right here and see if you guys have any questions just based on that concept of the right message to the right people with the right rhythm.
I have a question, Bill. So I've been trying to think about, as you were saying about the events, of course, and having it at the same time. We have one that this would have been our third year, right, of a particular.
Ooh.
So, which leads to my question of sort of what are you thinking about the fact that some of this stuff has been interrupted during COVID? Do you feel like it's going to take some time to get that rhythm back, or are there ways that you are seeing some of your clients try to replace those in-person things with other mechanisms to keep the rhythm going? What are your thoughts there?
I'll give you a live example, and I don't have permission from this client to talk about them, but I'm going to assume that I do, and I'll apologize to them later if they get mad. Boys and Girls Club in Roanoke had a annual event every December 1st, I think, where they have their kids, the boys and the girls that go there, serve dinner to the donors. And it's their big annual dinner, and the donors pay money to go there, and that's what they do. Well, this year they can't have that dinner. So they're having an undinner. And what they're doing is they are doing a combination of mail and digital and social and everything. They are doing a big splash, and they are encouraging their donors to purchase meals that are being donated by a local chef to be delivered to their house, and that the proceeds from this would go to support the Boys and Girls Club. But it's the same theme. This year it's an Alice in Wonderland theme. It's the same, everything they did when they had it in person, they're doing it with the imaging and the messaging that they are putting out there through mail and email and social. So yeah, you can do a virtual version of your event to keep that rhythm. That was a great question. Anybody else? Well, I can share with you a few trends that are interesting. It's funny, people get excited about all these little things that I'm going to tell you about. The big three, the right message to the right people with the right rhythm, are way more important than one we'll talk to you about now. Another thing that helps, of course, is multi-channel. When you do an appeal, a year-end appeal, or any kind of campaign, it is important that you get it to the right people, which in today's world means having it on 2 or 3 at least channels. So you might combine mail with email, you might combine email with social, you might combine, have it on your website, obviously, but coordinating that message. And that message in this case is the look, feel mostly. It's the wording, it's the text, it's the images. It's very important. And there's some really interesting things you can do with multi-channel these days. Some of you might be familiar with informed delivery at the post office, where you get an email every day telling you what's going to be in your mailbox later that day. That happens through that intelligent mail barcode that's on the mail pieces these days. It gets scanned multiple times throughout the postal stream, but the important scan is the one that goes into when the piece is going into the tray for Joe the carrier to take down the street. That's the scan where you see the picture of what's going to be in your mailbox. Well, we can tap into that database at the post office and have that scan, when the tray is being loaded, trigger an email. And because it's based on the scan of when the tray's being loaded, there is the post office has an algorithm that tells that specifies when the delivery date is. Usually it's later the same day. Sometimes it's the next day. It depends on the branch and the route, but it is like 98.9% accurate. So the postal software knows when the piece is being delivered, so it can auto trigger this email, and the email can say, hi, Ashley, did you get our letter yesterday? I bet you trashed it, didn't you? But no worries, you can still support the community foundation by clicking here or something like that. And what happens then, people do this a lot on their own. They send an email at the same time that they're mailing, or they send emails at the same time they're having their event, or emails at the same time they're doing their social. That's good. But in this case, the fact that the email can refer to the specific mail delivery date and say, hey, did you get our postcard yesterday? The one about. Because what happens when people get that piece of mail? Half of them just look at it and throw it away. Someone might look at it and toss it on the kitchen counter. Someone might stick it on the table for their spouse to see or whatever. It doesn't really matter. Even if they throw it away, if you've done the first part right of the right message, they'll see the branding consciously or even subconsciously. They'll know they've gotten that postcard from your organization, such that when the email comes the next day and says, hey, Dr. Smith, did you get our letter yesterday? It's called an enhanced response. Dr. Smith will go, oh yeah, I did. What'd I do with that thing? And his likelihood of clicking on the link and following your call to action increases. The national average is 38%. So that's classic multi-channel marketing, where you tie, in that case, you're tying mail with email. So multi-channel does work, has to be coordinated. We work a lot with other marketing companies that provide different types of marketing media to coordinate timing. In fact, right now we're timing one of our clients' mailings with some TV stuff they're doing. So multi-channel is big. The other thing that really works is personalization. And you've been hearing about this for years, but it is absolutely amazing how it actually works. And I know a lot of people think that, well, how does it work? People know that it's just all automated. It does. I guess people like their own names or something, but I mean, every study shows that if you have accurate personalization, where you're referring to people by name, or even referring to their last gift by dollar amount, or you're referring to the name of their town, or whatever it is you're doing that lets them know that you know who they are, greatly increases the response rate. So that is something that we recommend a lot. We do this a lot with university development. One of our clients is Radford University, and they do traditional mailings to their alumni, and those mailings are highly segmented based on the college of graduation. They are, personalized to each donor. Their database is outstanding. We do the same thing for Clemson University. We're doing a big one now for Clemson, where they have 14 different segments, I think, based on this is all for the College of Science there, but they have different departments within that college. And if that alumni was specialized in this, they get a message from this student. And it's incredible how they weave all that together into a very personalized ask that comes from someone who's talking their language and talking to them by name. So yeah, personalization is something that really works well. A few other little tips and tricks. If you're mailing or emailing, if you're mailing, like, pre-populate that reply card. I think it's still 82% of all donations to nonprofits are still checks. There is a steady increase of online donations. People love the convenience of online, but the national studies show they don't trust it unless there's something physical that precedes it. If there's the open house, then they'll respond to the email. If there's the mail piece, then they'll respond to the email. But the vast majority of donations to nonprofits nationally still come through written checks. So that usually means a mailing of some kind with a reply card, and that reply card should be pre-populated with that donor's information. It's just another touch of personalization. It makes it a little bit easier for them to respond. And of course, it lets you know exactly which record in your database that donation came from. So that's just a little trick. There's a lot of, we have a lot of discussions with nonprofits about how expensive looking a mailed appeal should be. I think that really gets back to what your donors expect and trust. We don't see any correlation between like putting a color picture on an envelope versus having a black and white envelope. We have clients that are, I mean, our data shows the response rates don't go down if you switch to black and white. They don't go up if you switch to color. If it's the right message to the right people delivered with the right rhythm, that trumps all of that. That being said, we do a lot of color on envelopes. We have clients that think that really helps people notice it in the mail and want to open it. So that's kind of a trend. Any questions at this point?
I have a comment. I have an organization that sends me mailings throughout the year asking for gifts, and they always include the return envelope stickers. And every time that I mail a letter and I use my return address sticker, if I haven't made a gift, I feel guilty using that sticker. And so it's a constant reminder of that organization, because I know they sent me this as part of their ask. And so I'm not sure if that's their intention, but that's how I feel when I use that sticker with my name and address on it when I put something in the mail.
You feel guilty.
If I haven't made that gift yet, like, oh, they spent money on me,
right,
and my address on this, and I did not, make my donation yet. And so that personalization piece definitely gets me in that aspect.
Is that a March of Dimes thing?
No, it's not. It is a national organization, though.
Right. Yeah, that's a favorite of some large national.
Yeah.
They do stuff like that. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
That brings up kind of the question of, if you're doing a mailing, how much stuff do you put in the mailer? Do you add extra cards and magnets? And, people do all kinds of things. Our data shows you have slightly better success if you keep it pretty simple, that you don't confuse the donor with a lot of different pieces. Now, most of our clients ignore that advice and put lots of pieces in there, but our data doesn't show that it helps any.
So I have another question, Bill. So you mentioned obviously the high personalization and segmentation, and of course the examples that you gave were Radford and Clemson, which both have much larger development offices, right, than probably some of the nonprofits that are here in the area. So are there certain things that you feel like are just really worth the investment of time and energy for a small nonprofit? If our resources are limited in terms of how much time and energy and money we can spend, what are some of the things that you feel like this is really the bang for the buck? Here's where you invest your time.
That is a great insight. Yes, the thing that I think every nonprofit needs to be doing, small or large, is a personalized appeal. Now, whether it's email or mail, it's just that, referring to the person by name is huge. I'll tell you a funny story about this. This is with WVTF. Some years ago, they were doing generic appeals where they just say, dear friend or dear donor. These were mailed appeals at the time. And we encouraged them to personalize, and they were resistant because this was working pretty well for them, to just say, dear friend of, I think they said, dear friend of NPR or something like that. But the development director, who's no longer there, so I can talk about her behind her back, was very resistant to doing any personalization, but she finally, we pestered them enough. And so she had a lapsed donor mailing coming up. It was like 7,000 records of people that, used to give and that didn't anymore. And so she said, okay, we'll let you personalize on this one, half of them. And we'll see if that half that personalized got any better results than the ones that we don't personalize. So we got all excited. We took that letter that she had written and we marked it up with personalization, where we were going to talk about, when you listen to All Things Considered from your home in Shawsville, we were going to personalize with everything we could from that database, referring to the last time they did give, all this stuff. And we took it to her and said, here's what we like to do. And she said, no, we're not doing any of that. We're just going to say, Dear John. We're saying John instead of dear friend. All they would let us do is personalize in the salutation line of the letter. And I remember just distinctly feeling like she's called our bluff. It's not going to work. You got to have more than that. And she had a 67% higher response rate on the personalized than the non-personalized. It was absolutely staggering that if you personalize like that. Now, sometimes there's messaging where saying Dear Dr. Smith is not as good as, all friends of the Symphony Orchestra unite, or whatever. You have a different intro, but then at least personalize the response device. Somehow in there, get personalization. It's not expensive. It's the same as generic. It really is. It was simple stuff like that is not, I would say 75% of our mail pieces for appeals run on digital presses anyway. So personalizing is like an extra, 45 minutes of setup, and everything else is the same. So just basic personalization, I would encourage every nonprofit to do. The second is, if you need a way to grow your donor base. And you might have an excellent way. You might have ways that you discover new donors. Maybe you have some kind of networking events, or you have really passionate employees and staff members who go out and knock doors on with their neighbors. But if you don't have a method of acquiring new donors, you really should look at database acquisitions. These are not expensive like they used to be. We're talking, a few $100s, not thousands. And this is where, and it's a little creepy, but it works. There are national compilers who do nothing but acquire, massage, analyze, and resell data. And you know some of these. You've heard of Dun & Bradstreet. They do it with businesses. You may have heard of Equifax, the one that had the big data breach a few years ago. Experian, Axiom. There are about 7 of them nationally. They're giants in this field. And then there are hundreds of third-party people that buy from these people and resell. We actually work with Axiom ourselves, but we get information from all of them. And what you can do now, and this works with what we call consumers, individuals, residents. It is not as accurate with businesses, and I can tell you why later. But if your donors are consumers, are people that live in houses and apartments, the amount of information available is scary. And you've heard about all this. It's all about data privacy and all this stuff. But every time you do anything, it's recorded. It is absolutely scary. I mean, you just subscribe to a magazine, you make a purchase, you click on this, you click on that, and consumers are clicking so much these days that they have these, it's AI, it's artificial intelligence doing these algorithms, and they can predict behavior. It's really kind of scary, but I mean, it used to be 10 years ago, we could go in and say, okay, we want to target the town of Christiansburg, and we want to hit everybody who lives in a house that has a value of at least $100,000 up to, 300, and we want to hit this age group, we can still do that. But now, in addition to that, we can request people with those demographics who like to support local nonprofits and are especially interested in causes of health and children. And you can go in, and the quality of those prospects is pretty high. Our clients are seeing some real success with this, and it's not the scary, expensive thing like it used to be. So those are the two things that I would highly recommend anyone do, is definitely the personalization, and then maybe dip your feet in the water of a database acquisition. Maybe just acquire 100 new names. And again, they're not going to become donors the first time you touch them. Remember, you got to have rhythm. Rhythm doesn't become rhythm until it's been repeated a few times. So we have a saying about the cost of doing appeals, is that the rhythm is so important. You need to adjust the scale to fit your budget to sustain the rhythm. It is way better to touch 500 people rhythmically and be able to sustain that rhythm than it is to touch 5 million people with a blast. Our data shows that a blast rarely works. What works is that sustained rhythmic touch. And I encourage you to do this with everything. I know that, sometimes people think that like social media is more spontaneous and we just throw this up because this happened. You can do that, but if you really want to see the power of social media, do that post rhythmically. And again, adjust the scale to fit your budget of time to sustain the rhythm. Like, if you, let's say you want to do a little, what they used to call a blog, I'm going to write a little something and post it on social media. I'm going to do one every week. Well, maybe. I would say maybe make it once a month. Adjust the scale to fit your budget of time so that you can sustain the rhythm. Don't overreach on that, because what doesn't work is doing it with enthusiasm once a day for a few days, and then you kind of dribble off, and then it's been a month since you did one, and then it's been 3 months. That kind of sporadic messaging is not as successful as doing it rhythmically. So if you're going to do a social media post, then first Monday of every month, or every Tuesday, or whatever fits your budget of time. Other questions?
And if you guys want to type them in the chat box, you can do that as well.
Well, I think that's about it, guys.
Yeah.
That's my 2 cents worth of. I will tell you that right now we are WordSprint is in the throes of our busiest appeal mailing than ever. It seems that it's interesting, the timing. Talk about rhythm. It used to be that everybody wanted to do the end of year because of tax implications and all that. That has changed a little bit because tax laws have changed and people have experimented a little bit more. And we have clients that are beginning to slowly spread it out, trying not to mess with their rhythm, but like every year they do it a week earlier. But basically it's still that time between October and December that is the vast majority of the campaigns that we manage. The other frequent time is in the spring, in April and May. But we do have clients that are experimenting with campaigns in January, February, in June. People are testing the waters.
Looks like we do have one question in the chat box. How does a small organization contact a company that sells localized prospective customer data?
Any mail house could help you with this. We could, ASI and Roanoke could do it. You could also go online and just type in, donor prospects available. You'll get dozens, hundreds of options there. My suggestion is stick with names like Experian or Equifax or Axiom. There are other intermediate brokers. Tell you what I could do, Ashley, I can send out an email that you could share with people, and I will give everybody the names of some of these brokers. It's really better to go through a broker because they're so good at it, and it doesn't cost you any more. They get their sliver from the big, huge compiler they're working with. So yeah, I think that would be the way to do it. I can send out a bunch of names of brokers and email addresses and all that.
Yeah, and we always post the recordings of these sessions on our website, so we can include that with the presentation on our website.
Okay. Those databases are readily available, is what I'm trying to say.
Thank you. And have you seen any data about the impact of Giving Tuesday on end of year appeals?
It's funny, I was looking for that just yesterday because I was going to come in here with all these national statistics for you guys. And I guess due to COVID, there are not many statistics later than really 2018. I mean, there's some on 2019, but nothing for 2020 so far. There was a lot of discussion of Giving Tuesday and whether it helped or hurt. But no, I've not seen any conclusive data on that. I do know that in our world with our clients, most of which are in Southwest Virginia, they do their own giving days. The Thanksgiving Giving Tuesday thing is not as popular with them. You know, like the colleges that we work with have their own online giving days. And of course we have the, Give Big and all that going on. National Giving Tuesday, in my mind, the jury's still out on that.
Thanks. Any other questions for Bill?
And Ashley, if you'll be able to give people my email if they want to ask follow-up questions by email, that'd be great.
Yeah, I'll be happy to do that.
Yeah, happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. I'm going to share my screen again real quick to wrap us up here. And thank you, Bill, for being here today and sharing all your great tips. So as I mentioned, this recording in PowerPoint is going to be posted on our website, and I'll include all that information with Bill's contact information for you all if you want to follow up with him, and the information for the broker. So that will be posted on our website later this week. The foundation is in the midst of our move right now, so we are a little slower at getting things done right now, but it'll be there, we promise. Our final nonprofit listening session of the year is going to be on December the 17th at 8 a.m. And we are still doing our nonprofit feature Fridays on social media. So if you want your organization to be featured on our social media website, all you need to do is complete our Google form. And also, we use what you guys are looking for to create these nonprofit listening sessions based on our COVID-19 check-in. So it is always live. So if you guys have filled it out before and some things have changed, you can always fill that form out again as we are thinking about 2021 and what that calendar will look like. But thank you guys for being here, and we hope that you have a great rest of your day and a good Thanksgiving.
Thanks, Ashley. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks.
Thanks, Bill.
Thank you.
Bye.